HarperCollins presents The Unknown Shore by Patrick O'Brien. Read by George Weightman. Chapter 1. Mr. Edward Charworth of Medmenham was a well-disposed, good-natured man with an adequate fortune, an amiable wife, and a numerous family. He thought the world an excellent place, and he could suggest no way in which it could be improved, except for the poachers and the Whigs. They would be abolished in an ideal world, and the trout in his stream would be a trifle larger. Yet, in the present state of things, Whigs abounded, and whenever Mr. Charworth thought of them, his cheerfulness was clouded. Sir Robert Walpole's name always made him frown, and he would happily have seen the Prime Minister hanged, drawn, and quartered. He could not bear the sound of a Whig. How much more obnoxious, then, was Mr. Elwes, who was not only a Whig, but also Mr. Charworth's nearest neighbour. The thought of Mr. Elwes luxuriating in Whiggery not half a mile beyond the kitchen garden filled Mr. Charworth with indignation. The earliest symptoms of this indignation were a straightening of his back and a tightening of his lips. He had served under the Duke of Marlborough, and this martial stiffening was associated in his mind with carnage, the thunder of guns, blood, and the general unpleasantness of battle. Mrs. Charworth, upon seeing the beginnings of it, glanced anxiously round the breakfast table. It was so very large a table, there were so many children round it, and so many things upon it that obstructed her view: a ham, a round of cold beef, an unusually tall pork pie, chafing dishes with mutton chops, eggs, bacon, kippered trout, kidneys and mushrooms, apart from the tea and coffee urns, and the host of minor objects such as marmalade, toast, rolls, potted char, and Sophia's bowl of ass's milk, that it took her some time to survey the whole. Anne, Charles, and Sophia were behaving perfectly well, and so was little Dormer, the youngest to be allowed downstairs. But she saw with regret that Georgiana was balancing her spoon and causing its bowl to float, in imitation of her cousin Jack, who was partially concealed by the raised pie. She coughed significantly, but they were too engrossed to hear, and it was obvious from her fascinated stare that Isabella, Jack's sister, was going to join in. Mr. Charworth grew more and more upright in his chair as he turned the page of the letter that he was reading, and Mrs. Charworth knew that unless he found something agreeable on this new page, his right hand would go up to clutch his wig, his left thump the letter onto the table, and he would cry, "Lard, lard, lard, Mrs. Charworth!" It was very thoughtless of Jack. He knew that Mr. Charworth was easily vexed in the morning, but perhaps Jack thought that he was no longer subject to reproof, having been away from home. She peered round the pie at her younger cousin, who, with his head barbarously near the cloth, and his rapidly growing form bulging from his blue midshipman's coat, was now engaged in making a storm in his teacup by blowing. Jack Byron and his sister were cousins of the Charworths, but they had lived at Medmenham from their youngest days, ever since Lady Byron had died, and they were entirely part of the household. Even now that Jack's elder brother, the present Lord Byron, was living at Newstead Abbey again, there was no question of their going back there. "Lard, lard, lard, Mrs. Charworth!" cried the master of the house, grasping his wig. She automatically put out her hand to steady the tea-urn, which was apt to fall over, parboiling her knees. But the expected thump did not come. Mr. Charworth arrested his descending hand and pointed its index finger at Jack. "What the devil do you think you are doing?" he exclaimed. But his words were prompted less by a spirit of inquiry than by a momentary urge to be disagreeable, and without waiting for an answer, he went on, "If these are naval manners, manners, forsooth, they were best kept for sea." "What is it, my dear?" asked Mrs. Charworth, waving a lace handkerchief by way of distracting his attention from Jack, whom she loved dearly. "The stream!" cried Mr. Charworth. "The stream! He's going to turn the stream into his top field to make an enormous, vast, loathsome fountain for his wedding day." "Well, my dear," said Mrs. Charworth, who had expected something very much more shocking than this, "I am sure Mr. Elwes will turn it back again afterwards, when he is married." "And what do you suppose the trout will do in the meantime?" cried Mr. Charworth, with all the agony of a devoted fisherman. "What do you suppose will happen to the trout, Mrs. Charworth?"
Sample complete. Ready to continue?